Hey guys, welcome to the Weight Loss by Pete podcast. This is being simulcast on YouTube as well as on my podcasts on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Stitcher. Today we're going to talk about stevia versus sugar. Which one is better to use as a sweetener, whether you're just putting into your coffee or tea, or perhaps you're baking something. So I'm going to break down a few different things here, guys, in the hopes that it really helps you to understand how this all works. So for starters, let's just go with we go get coffee in the morning. We make coffee in the morning, we pour the cup, and then we add some stuff in right before we drink it. So the most common thing that a lot of people will turn to is sugar. And look, sugar, a little bit of sugar is not going to kill you. It's not going to do very much to you at all. But more often than not, that's not what we see. If you get one of those crazy macchiatos, caramel macchiato, things like that at Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts, even a local coffee shop, more often than not, it is loaded with sugar. In fact, the average coffee beverage from Dunkin' Donuts, and that's not just black coffee, that's like one of the pre-made different types of coffee drinks that they have, has just over 30 grams of sugar in a small. That's insane. I had clients over the years where we cleaned up their nutrition and they'd still have trouble losing weight. And this was earlier on in my career, and I had no idea why. And then I finally clicked, and I asked them, well, what do you drink every day? Are you just drinking water? Like, what do you do? Like, how do you take your coffee? Do you drink soda? Do you drink alcohol? Things like that. And more often than not, the main culprit was a coffee drink with a minimum of 30 grams of sugar. I once had a client who was drinking 100 grams of sugar a day because she got 2 medium-sized coffee drinks from Dunkin' Donuts. So what happens with sugar? Really quickly, just not to bore you, but just so you know, ingesting copious amounts of non-fibrous refined carbohydrates such as sugar stimulates a process called the insulin resistance cycle. Basically, we ingest it in the form of the drink, or if we're baking, we bake with the sugar in there. And because there's a ton of sugar, our body instantly absorbs what's needed at that point. Our body's pancreas produces the hormone insulin to regulate our blood sugar levels. And while all we need is right there and taken to the appropriate cells, muscles, and tissues, the rest is stored as fat. Short term, you'll feel some brain fog. You'll have a really big energy spike and then drop. You'll get that 2 o'clock feeling like the 5-hour energy commercials like to talk about. But over time, you're storing more and more fat, and it has that compound effect. And it also can mess up your body's insulin response so that you can eventually become insulin resistant, which is a precursor to pre-diabetes, then type 2 diabetes, and that opens up the floodgates for a myriad of health conditions, obesity being one of them. So obviously this isn't something you want to do, because even if you have a couple of coffees a day and you're putting sugar in there, you get a couple of coffee drinks a day, that really adds up. That's almost counting like you're drinking a milkshake or something sometimes. It's really that high up. So you don't want to be doing sugar. Now, over the last 20 years, though, luckily in the last 5 years or so, there's really been some backlash about it. People have talked about potentially having artificial sweeteners, so Splenda, aspartame-based ones like Sweet and Low, Equal. These are ones they're like, well, they're not caloric, so they don't elicit an insulin response, and they don't have any impact on your blood sugar levels whatsoever, which is true. The issue is a lot of these artificial sweeteners actually destroy your gut microbiome. And in very recent years, it's been in medical literature for decades, but in very recent years, this has finally started to come to light in the medical and scientific communities. And basically, if your gut health is messed up, your chances of getting really sick, of developing a chronic condition. Here in the United States, the CDC recently released a study that 1 in 2 Americans has a chronic condition. So 50% of the 300 plus million people in this country, so 150 or more million people in this country, have been diagnosed with a chronic condition. That doesn't even begin to go into the ones who have not been diagnosed. And then I believe it was 1 in 4 has 2 or more chronic conditions. What's a chronic condition? So again, dating back to sugar, it could be type 2 diabetes, it could be obesity. Now, fortunately, those two can be reversed. Unfortunately, the other ones, not so much. You can develop an autoimmune condition. You can develop various forms of cancer. You can develop heart disease, hypertension. You can develop a neurological condition like Alzheimer's, dementia, Parkinson's. All of these things can happen if you destroy your gut microbiome. And often, when you start showing symptoms, maybe in an early stage of this, and a real doctor catches on, you might be able to fix it just through some basic dietary changes. And often that involves eliminating different foods. I was actually on a summit earlier today for weight loss. I'll include the link in the description down here below. But moral of the story was we were having a discussion about nutrition, and the host asked me, about, do I have my clients, do I have my group members eliminate things from their diets in the beginning to see how they feel and to see how they transform? And I said, absolutely, yes. There are so many people who have unknown food allergies that wreak havoc in their gut microbiome and are thus making it impossible, literally impossible, to lose weight, let alone improve their health. And they may actually be making themselves sick without even knowing it. So whether it's sucralose, which is the sciencey way of saying Splenda, or it's aspartame, like Sweet and Low and Equal, these are not things you want to ingest. They may not have the same initial issues that sugar does, but they have their own can of worms that you don't want to open. So what can you turn to? Well, there's a couple of things. Fortunately, Starbucks, which is the biggest brand here in the States, at least around here in New York, that and Dunkin' Donuts, Starbucks has now a monk fruit stevia sweetener, which is good. So monk fruit is a good one, but that's not the one I'm going to talk about today. I'm not as familiar with it. That's come to prominence in the last year or so. What I've been using for the last 5-6 years myself in my coffee, whenever I've decided to bake, is stevia. Now, stevia is derived from a plant in both Asia and South America, and it's a natural sweetener. So it's literally from a plant. They grind it down similar to what they do with sugar cane, and it forms a white powdery substance just like sugar. The only difference being, A, it does not elicit a blood sugar or insulin response, which is good. So if you're diabetic, you can have it. You can have as much of it as you want, and you won't have to worry. And the cool thing is it's been linked to some very good health properties, and a couple of them that I found out just earlier. I was just doing some more research on it, making sure it all worked. It actually suppresses your appetite, and unlike other sweet things, it actually does not increase your craving for sugar. So I put it in my coffee because, let's be honest, black coffee tastes like crap. It's just like drinking a shot of alcohol. It does not taste good. If you can put anything in there that will help nullify the pain, then you'll obviously turn to it. So I'll use stevia in my coffee. I'll have black coffee in the morning. I'll put some stevia in there. I'll mix it up, and I'm good. I actually have tea next to me right now. Here you go. If you're watching, you can see I'm letting it cool a little bit. I just made it right before I started recording this, but there was stevia in there. I mixed in some green tea. It's really a great sweetener. I've also used it to bake. I made cookies and donuts and breads with it. Obviously, not grain-based varieties. One's made out of almond flour and things of that nature, and they've come out phenomenal. Some people, as a fair warning, some people do not like the taste of stevia, even though it's really 300 times sweeter than sugar. For whatever the reason, some people say it has a bitter aftertaste and thus they don't like it. I personally do not have that problem. I actually prefer it to sugar when I have, and I've actually done this test on myself. There were some like Enterman's cookies in my apartment a few years ago, and I was making some cookies of my own of a similar variety. I believe they were just sugar cookies, or in my case, stevia cookies. So I had a bite of the sugar cookie. It was all right, but you know, as your palate changes and as your body changes, because it's not ingesting copious amounts of sugar anymore, it didn't really taste as good. It tasted a little too sweet. I had the stevia cookie, and it was phenomenal. Blew it out of the water. So just bite sugar, bite stevia. I went with the stevia, and I've gone with the stevia every time. I don't crave sugar, and they'll warn you that if you have stevia or artificial sweetener or anything else, having something sweet will elicit sugar cravings. with artificial sweeteners, that's been scientifically proven to be true. I've yet to see that with stevia. And even if that is the case for you, like I said, you can't really overdose on stevia. And it's not like you're going to be pouring it down your gullet. You're going to have a similar amount as you would if you were having sugar or artificial sweeteners in the past. So, long story short, guys, stevia is my preferred natural go-to sweetener, whether you're mixing it again in coffee or tea, or you're cooking or baking with it. It is very diverse. It has no effect on your blood or your insulin levels, and it has no negative consequences to your gut microbiome. And in fact, I never even elaborated on this point earlier. Stevia has been shown to have regenerative properties, potentially. There's not a ton of conclusive evidence on it, but potentially it could have regenerative properties. So just like intermittent fasting can have regenerative properties on your body by going through this cell process called autophagy, where basically during this fasting window, you're secreting the toxins and crap in your system, this can have a similar effect. Again, there's not a ton of science on it, not a ton of research, but the research that is out there, again, shows that it's safe for diabetics. It has no effect on your blood sugar levels, aka it's great when you're looking to improve your health or lose weight or potentially even reverse your type 2 diabetes. And if any of the prospective health benefits that are linked to it are true, all the better. You're actually ingesting something that is beneficial to you, to your health, and to your weight loss journey. So thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Again, I'm Pete Weintraub, permanent weight loss specialist. Do me a favor, if you like this episode, feel free to subscribe to my channel, whether it's here on iTunes or it's on my podcast on iTunes. Whether it's on YouTube or it's on iTunes, SoundCloud, or Stitcher on my podcast. And also one last thing, in the description below, I also have a free gift I want to give you. It's a free report that details the 5 strategies that I personally used to lose 100 pounds and keep them off. They're the same 5 strategies I teach my permanent weight loss clients, and they're the basis to losing weight in a healthy, sustainable, and permanent way, just like I lost my 100 pounds. Feel free to download that. The link is in the description below. All you need to do is enter your email address so I know where to send it. You'll get it, and that's that. All right? So thanks again for watching or listening, and I'll talk to you tomorrow. Have a good one.